Well, I thought me and you could play Seinfeld and Bill Cosby.
No, I don't like that.
Accurate. That's happened to me more times when pitching a joke than I care to mention. Hello, my name is George Igoe, and today I'm going to watch some depictions of TV writers' rooms and break down how realistic or unrealistic they are. I've worked in TV writers' rooms for many years, both as a writer and a writer's assistant, and I'm very familiar with the ins and outs, so let's break down some clips.
You guys want to have a 1-minute dance party?
Yeah.
Crank it, Tooper. Well, I've never seen that, but I have seen much stupider things that took longer and were even less productive than a 1-minute dance party. I recall an instance where all the writers spent a solid half hour trying to catch a roll of tape with their teeth, like the way a dog catches a frisbee. So yeah, compared to a half hour of that, a 1-minute dance party seems pretty reasonable.
Oh, please, finish your dance.
Oh, we were just taking a little break, and we all love the music of Chameleonaire.
I see.
One of the things I've noticed when watching 30 Rock is that the writer's room is fairly easy to get into. People just kind of wander in as they please, which is not realistic. In reality, the writer's room is pretty off limits to the rest of the staff. And the reason for this is because writer's rooms are just disgusting places. The topics discussed and the language used are just repugnant. And I mean, that's a selling point for me. I enjoy that. But it's definitely the kind of thing you don't want leaving the confines of the room.
Tracy Jordan's here.
Well, stars of the show don't often visit the writer's room in my experience, but it has happened, though I've never seen them get a round of applause. And this is a super name-dropping story, so apologies for sounding like a bit of a douchebag here, but I once worked at a show where Kanye West guest starred, and he visited the writer's room one day, and I think it was an even bigger fiasco than that clip. But I've actually already told that story in this channel. I reenacted the entire thing in Lego stop-motion animation, so I'll link that in the description if you want to check it out, and a thing should pop up in the corner. Yeah, there it is.
I'll be in here every day, soaking it up. So please, return to work and act like I'm not here.
Yeah, an executive sitting in the writer's room would never happen. I've never seen any writer's room that had anything but total contempt for the executives. I mean, they are ruthlessly mocked and usually given very insulting and graphic nicknames. Funny nicknames, but still very insulting and graphic. In fact, every showrunner I've ever seen went to great lengths to limit the amount of information the executives even had. Beyond scripts and outlines that absolutely had to be given to them, they would share as little with them as possible. They would do things like hold off on sending scripts and outlines until the last possible minute, just so the executives would have less time to look at it. The logic being that the less time they had to look at it, the less time they had to give stupid notes to the writers.
I have a broadcast standards note.
Okay.
The following inappropriate words need to be deleted from tonight's script. Crotchety, twiddle, and gesticulate.
This is more of a table read situation than an actual writer's room, so in that regard, having a standards and practice person there is very accurate. Standards and practice, or SMP, they're the censors. They tell you what you can and can't say in a show. So as you might imagine, they're not very popular in the writer's room. I used to work at Family Guy, and I know that it was a constant back and forth with SMP over what they could get away with. But I always thought it was funny because every week SMP would send over these documents that outlined what was problematic in a given episode, and they were these very official looking, almost legal documents, but they'd be discussing these gross, outlandish bits. Like it would say stuff like, the beat about explosive diarrhea plays in poor taste. Please consider revising. And just the contrast of those two things always made me laugh.
Hey there, and welcome to Up Late with Miss Piggy!
Whatever.
I know what some of you are thinking. Is that Miss Piggy? Did she miss her waxing appointment? Just kidding. I'm Fozzie Bear, and it's my job to warm up the audience with jokes.
Fozzie is actually not any worse than some audience warm-up guys that I've seen. I mean, some of those guys are not that funny. But in a way, that's kind of the point. Audience warm-up is a tricky thing, because on one hand, you have to loosen up the audience so that they'll laugh at the show taping, but on the other hand, you can't wear them out with some killer set because then they'll be burnt out and they won't laugh at the actual show. It's definitely a fine line you have to walk, so I don't know, it could be the perfect career for Fozzie.
Now, Alan challenges her, see? And he says, all right. Laura says, watch me now. I'll never open anything of yours again.
Yeah, and later a letter comes, see? And she's tempted to open it.
The first thing that's funny is how nice they're dressed. That is not the preferred wardrobe in most rooms, but it was the 60s, things were different. Something I wonder watching this is who's writing this all down, because they're never gonna remember all this. Every writer's room has a writer's assistant, which is a job I did for many years, whose job it is to sit at a computer and write everything down. And that computer is hooked up to TV screens or computer monitors that are placed around the room so everyone can see what you're typing. But even though this sounds like a crappy job, and it is, it's actually really hard to get because it's one of the primary ways that people become TV writers. That's because because you're sitting in the writer's room all day, every day, you learn the show inside and out, you become friendly with the writers, you get a chance to pitch jokes, and hopefully one day you get promoted to writer. In fact, that's exactly what happened to me. I was a writer's assistant on a show for a couple of seasons, then eventually they promoted me to the writing staff. But those are the writer's room scenes I have. Leave a comment if you think there's any other scenes I've missed, and maybe I'll talk about them in a future video. And if you're feeling binge-watchy, YouTube thinks you'll like these videos, and I upload every Tuesday, so be sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss out on any of my shenanigans.